Boom! Yay, we're live! And hopefully the sound is working again. Yay, it's always good. Oh, it is working! It is working! It's working far too well, I think. Right, let me see if I can't make it slightly less loud. Oh, that's why it's going too loud. It's decided to go to the microphone USB. I am sorry about this, everyone. Occasionally, it decides it's going to be fun. Microphone. Apply. Okay, and hopefully that is better. Hopefully, he says, that is better. That should be a lot better. Hey, caramba, caramba, caramba. And and let's make sure there is a noise suppression and there is a noise gate. Yes, we want there to be a noise gate. We do. We want there to be compression and we want there to be a parametric equalizer on. We want all these things active. Apply. Okay, save them. Hello, everyone. Hopefully that's working. And yes, I do look a bit of a mess today. But I'm slowly getting this office all sorted out. It's going to reach the point at which it's going to get messier for a few more weeks, and then it's going to get a lot cleaner and a lot organized. It has reached, but today is my sister's birthday, so I have to admit I haven't been focusing on this perhaps as much as I should do. Well, I've been focusing on my sister's birthday. Seriously, I get through Iron Brew far too quickly. Hello, Rick Vasava. Hello, John Shea. Hello, Peter Dawson. Hello, Felix B. Hello, Carmen Gazberg. Hello, DGB40. Yes, we finally got to the Battle of the Saints. We've had enough diversions. It's always nice to have the Battle of the Saints finally come up. It's a good battle to do. Let's see, can I do that? Oh, that'd be quite fun. And hello, Cajun, or Hail the Mighty Catalina. And the Battle of the Saints as observed by the biplane from Carl Gazwag. Hello. All hail the various aircrafts, and do we need to begin the prayers and incantations to appease the ominous inhabiting the class computers? Sorry, aircraft, not aircrafts. Yes, aircraft. Aircraft. There's no such thing as aircrafts. Hello, Stafford Thompson. So you and Draconville are having naval history dueling banjos today. I'll help those with multi-screens and suit ourselves to both. I didn't know if Drac was doing something today or not. I'm just doing this because, well, as I said, finally doing the Battle of Saints, and it is my sister's birthday, so actually, it's gonna sound strange. The thing is with brew ships, I love doing them, but they can go on for the entire evening, whereas I can be slightly more discreet with one of these in that I can go on until the presentation's over, then answer a couple more questions, and then go back to the family. Well, when I say family party, it's my mum, my sister, and I, but you know, they actually quite like it, me being away for a bit, I think. It allows them to, you hear a fan. That's good. Oh, hopefully you can't hear the fan still. Hopefully that's gone. Hello, Nook. Hello, Tom Godding. Admiral Rodney. Oh, it's not just Admiral Rodney. It's fun. Afternoon. A lot better. That's much better. Greetings all. That's better. Good evening, Shane F. Good evening, Hadrian, Bilge Twidget, Derp Squad. Hello. Hello, Bud Guy 8829. Hello, Aviator Enterprise, Greg Strowski, Tom Golding. Hello, everyone. Hello, Key 919. Hello, Derp Squad. Ooh. Hello, Pitman. Nonsense. Now La Bumba is playing. Yumba. Yes. Happy birthday to the fluffy research sibling. Yes, that is what we are. It's my big sister's birthday. Drac has a tiny 1 hour dry dock. Cool. He's also been busy this week. Actually, I have to admit, I wouldn't have got hardly any of all this done without Drac's help. Seriously, he is amazing. He's a very, very nice guy. We are much better in the world for having him here. Right then, Paul Johnson, hello. Effenfun, hello. So, today's topic is the Battle of the Saints. Now, yes, that is, I am basically trying out a new cover screen. Tell me what you think of it. I quite like the idea. I am working out what to do with Dan's excellent logo, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Dan's logo back down here again. And of course, this is the Drakenfell logo, which Drax sent to me. So that's probably going to go up the top again. I am probably going to put that up that side. But I'm also fairly certain that at some point, the paintings are going up along that wall. So that'll be quite nice behind me. I will pass on your birthday wishes to my sister. She's very happy with her birthday at the moment, because yeah, you don't realize this, but there's a slight advantage to having her brother go and do some work on his birthday and disappear off to do this, because it means that she can watch a musical video without me complaining the whole way through. Going, that surprisingly enough, and I have to say this, there are two people who can actually sing in Les Mis. And I am to this day surprised at that, because, well, I'm not surprised. Because Hugh Jackman is Hugh Jackman. He is a multi-talented person and a personage. And the fact that he hasn't ever done, to my knowledge, an Age of Sail captain role, I do not know how, because he really would be very good for that. But, or a starship captain. Both of those he could do very, very well. But, hello, Melanie1640. But, yeah, and Anne Hathaway. Either she was very, very well dubbed, or that girl has some pipes on her. Anyway. But, no, honestly, the rest of the time, it's me and a musical is not a great combination. Despite, I think, Netflix's best efforts, or Amazon Prime's, one of them keeps nagging me about watching, what is it? That musical La La Land, and I'm basically going, no, I'm definitely not the person you want watching a musical. Not under any way, shape, or form. Right then, let me just make sure that the links to this have gone out to the proper places, because I've just received a notification saying they haven't gone through. So, I'm going to make sure it goes live in large places. Ay, caramba. So how are we all doing today? Done. A large orange cat has just appeared on your chest. That is always nice, Melanie. That means that you must be very comfortable. No. This battle is... how do I put this politely? The Battle of the Saints is one of those battles where I have fun teaching American students, usually. Because... and I'm going to expand this out, and then I'm going to start reading about more. There is a debate over which war it was part of, because, yes, they like to claim it as part of the American Revolutionary War, which was 1775 to 1783. But There are no Americans involved in it. And it's the Anglo-French War of 1778 to 83, which is part of, you can argue, the American Revolutionary War, in that it's France taking advantage of Britain being distracted to try and take other places. And there's also the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War going on at this point as well. But just below that, I've got a list of all the battles which Britain and France fight in this period. And you will notice something. A lot of them happen in the Mediterranean. A fair number happen in North America and East Indies. But a huge number happen in the Caribbean. So here is my point. And this is where I get into trouble with people. Whilst this does to an extent subsume this, and there are just ongoing wars, this is more of an excuse for this to happen. In that, even if Britain hadn't been fighting America, they'd have probably ended up fighting France at this point, because Britain and France just fought each other. It was non-stop. Ooh, that's gone the wrong way. And it's just, you know. Yeah. Has reached that point at which I'm probably going to have to start cutting something again soon. I'm going to adjust the next script. Anyway, back to that. Back to the concept in the hand. Before I got distracted by the new the camera image. The whole point is, there is a lot of fighting going on. Britain and France are constantly beating the living daylights out of each other. A battle which doesn't involve any Americans. Yes, it takes place in the Caribbean. But in it, it's already after the battle, after Cornwallis has surrendered. And pretty much the British have gone, yeah, we've lost America. We're sort of already negotiating the peace treaty for that. This is not American Revolutionary War, although it does have a big impact on the peace treaty. But, yeah, this is Anglo-French War. Okay? Good evening, Shimi. Tom Golding, an okay end to a truly shocking week. I'm sorry to hear that. That's God. There was no American involved in the Revolutionary War. They were all rebellious British subjects, or members of First Nations. And we won't get into that one. That's kind of like my thing when I start pointing out that people ask me what's the war which had the highest percentage of American casualties. And they start bringing up usually Vietnam and various other things, and I go, American Civil War. That's good. There were also some French types. There were all French types all over the place. Zusky, are you telling us that Britain and France had a world war before it became popular in the 19th and 20th century? Well, let's see. Europe, Atlantic, Caribbean, North America, East Indies. That's pretty global there. Trent Lenko. Someone, arguably Britain's most comprehensive land victory of the war happened in 1778 at the Vichy on St. Lucia. Fun fact is, it's now a duty-free mall. Well, there is the East Indies involved, Peter Dawson. I'm not sure about you, but Pondicherry, Sadras, Provdian, Nagatatam, Batalaka, Sang, Trimcomley, and Cuddalaw, they're not exactly local. David Enbrise, this reminds me of the French and Indian War on the 7 Years' War. Depends which side of Atlantic you're on. Isn't this the point in which the British take the Acadians down to Louisiana? There is lots of interesting random stuff going on at this point. American Civil War. How could there be any other answer to the question? They always forget. It's fun. I can usually give students a good 10 minutes if I want to. Usually I'm nice and I cut it short at about 5 of them trying to come up with answers. Mostly because they automatically think of the American Civil War as being between America and the Confederacy. And they forget that as far as the Union was concerned, the Confederate States were just rebellious Americans. So, the point is that there is a large war going on. Okay, that there are large fleets being needed all over the world, large numbers of troops being needed all over the world. In which case, it does make certain things look rather interesting. You know, for example, the British Army, I think, in North America never rises much to 48,000. I think during the American Revolutionary War. There are nearly half as many troops as that already already by the British in the Caribbean. Okay, this is the point we'll be getting into. Is this going to be a lecture where you butcher French pronunciation? More than likely, Paul. More than likely. You know. Does the Lincoln County War get mentioned? Not often. So here's the French side of the battle, of the prelude to the battle. The Grasse-Savendra Convention. Basically, in October 1781, the French are chatting with the Spanish and going, so we want to make some money. And here's the thing. The convention which they're talking about had pretty much already been achieved its first aim of aiding the Americans and defeating the British naval squadron at New York. Thanks to the siege of Yorktown and General Cornwallis losing. It's interesting enough that New York fell and, well, it didn't really fall, but the squadron in New York didn't do much in the American Revolutionary War. They really were not really worth a lot. And de Grasse had managed to beat them quite easily on several occasions. But on this occasion, he has a problem. He now wants to drive the British out of the Caribbean. And he wants to drive them out well. So the official objectives were to aid the Americans and defeat the British naval squadron in New York, capture the British Windward Islands, and to conquer Jamaica. Well, you know, reality, it's more about Jamaica than it is about than it is about America, because Jamaica was more valuable to the British economy than all the 13 American colonies combined. Hello, Henry Milner. Yeah, it was worth a lot of money. We'll be getting into it later. How much and why. So basically, it's seen as a 2-for-1 by the Spanish. The idea is you can take a lot of money out of the British economy, and you can have a lot of fun doing it because, well, there shouldn't be that many troops there. There shouldn't be that much of a navy there. So we can go take a lot of money, and make ourselves very rich. And hopefully, more importantly, the hope was, especially from the French, if we get Jamaica, the Spanish and the Windward Islands, Whatever we give will make the Spanish happy enough. They will give up on trying to get back fricking Gibraltar because it's massacring us. Every time we attack Gibraltar, we're losing. It's so painful. The British keep beating us at Gibraltar. It's just not fun. And later on after this, an Admiral Howe's gonna turn up with even more troops. It's just not fair. It's just, so we want Jamaica. That's how we make it. Basically, consider this. If you're Gibraltar and Jamaica at the moment, I'm not sure which one be more insulted or which one be happier about this, but basically, the idea was that they would they would take Jamaica as compensation for failing to take Gibraltar. If anyone else isn't quite sure how that works, it's Franco-Spanish logic, and it's the logic of nations, which is honestly, Britain must be down and out because they're losing in North America. They're winning in lots of other places, though, but we will do this. General Thatcher, Bougainville feels like the best French commander at the sense. Potentially. Does go slightly off topic, but if someone other than Cornwallis and Thomas would the American Revolution been so successful if the British had put, unfortunately, honestly, the North America station never really gets the A team of British senior officers. They weren't supposed to be necessary. What happens after the American Revolution, though, is there is even more of there is a bit of a professionalization even in the British Army, and it's a subtle professionalization. You start to see staff being professionalized. You start to hear about staff colleges and various things being developed. And let's put it this way: the officers which grow up after the American Revolution are different than the ones before. But they'd already been heading that way in the good units in British forces. So, unfortunately, for the French, but fortunately for the British, really, de Grasse has to wait to get more resupplies. He's looking for 15,000 troops coming down from Saint Domingo. Think about that, 15,000 soldiers. If the French had landed those in the American Revolutionary War, God help the British armies in America. The British would probably send a new general and a lot more troops very quickly. They never did that, though. Darren Thatcher, have you read Nathaniel Pillbrook's In Hurricane Eye, and if so, your thoughts on it? I read it a while back, I think, and I think it was quite good. Definitely one thought-provoking. So I think thought-provoking quite good was my definition of it. I think. It's the one I'm thinking of, yes. De Grasse's force is 35 ships of line, including two 50-gun four-freights. And he's escorting a convoy of about 100 cargo ships. He had reinforcements inbound of another 12 ships of line from the Spanish, which should bring him up to 47 ships. And de Grasse was supposed to rendezvous with 15,000 troops. And their plan was to then land on Jamaica's north coast. The trouble is, as you might notice from this map down here, they hadn't really captured all the Windward Islands. In fact, they really hadn't captured all the Windward Islands. And the trouble is, not very far away from him, a fleet manages to arrive and start being formed up under a guy called Rodney. And suddenly there very much is a decent admiral on the North America station. And Hood is second in command again, but Hood this time has a very decent senior commander. And they even have a very good third in command. You know, it's a fun time. The 15,000 troops were mostly, let's put it this way, they had mostly been healthy and mostly not been hit by disease. So they were going to be 15,000 troops. It was the beginning of the campaign. And what they'd have been like at the end of the campaign, we can leave it another time. But, you know. So, what was Britain doing? We'll be getting into the ship's line, but mostly they are third rates. The vast majority of these fleets are third rates, i.e. 74s all roundabout. Britain, the thing for the French and Spanish was, theoretically, their convention was supposed to be secret. And, well, it might have started off secret, but the British knew about it fairly quickly. And quickly enough that they managed to get Hood and a whole load of reinforcements out to the Caribbean. Hello. Yes. We're beautiful army. Yeah. We're the Royal Navy. We're reinforcements here. They already had quite a fairly large chunk of troops out there because it was worth it. And you can see why. King George III wrote to Lord Sandwich, apparently, saying if necessary he would protect Britain's important Caribbean islands, if necessary, at the risk of Britain herself. Now, this was because that sugar made up 20% of all British imports and was worth 5 times as much as tobacco. I.e., sugar mattered a lot, and that was from Jamaica. And then there was tobacco as well. So, if you consider it with tobacco in, that's 24% of all British imports. Your economy, if you lose 24% of your imports and all that tax revenue, would be very, very interesting. Britain could not afford to do this. So it had to defend them. Hard. Now, he captured St. Kitts in February, although that had not been a straight fight. For the Grass had captured St. Kitts, yeah, but that really had not been fun. And his attempts and ideas that Antigua, St. Lucia, and Barbados would immediately fall to him proved no. It didn't happen. And then George Rodney arrived. And he brought 17 more ships of the line with him, which gave the RN 36 ships of the line, so a slight advantage over the French. More importantly, the British ships of the line had all been copper bombed, every single one. The French hadn't. And yeah, Rodney was confident enough in his ability to catch and deal with the Grass that even that he waited a day in St. Lucia before leaving, even though he was already behind him from St. Lucia, because he wanted more water for his ships. He wanted more fresh water for them. So I'm going, I think Haiti was worth something like a third to the 40% of the French economy at this point. Potentially. So this was before the French started surrendering quickly. Yeah, look, I occasionally do wind up the French by calling them cheese-eating surrender monkeys. but that's mainly being rude and winding people up. The fact is, the French do have a tradition of fighting quite hard. The trouble is for the French is they tend to fight hard, and when they lose, they tend to then have a massive culling of senior officers, which means no one ever learns the lessons to grow up. Whereas the British have a habit of, how to put it, the thing that the British really managed to play on in these wars is institutional memory. That is where their advantage comes in. They have a lot. They are able to maintain institutional memory far easier. They don't tend to kill them all off. That's good. When you say not a fair fight, was it a type of fight where you turn up knowing that there's a war and that the port welcomes not knowing that there is a war? Potentially. Jared Thatcher, the French Navy was far superior in the American Revolution to the French Revolution. Yeah, this is about. I would say this is the point at which the French Navy is almost at its top. This is one of the French Navy peak points. And it's a very, very good Navy they have here. De Grasse is a good admiral. Bougainville is a good admiral. They are a good set of senior officers. It's an organized fighting force. So here are the French commanders. You have Admiral Francois Joseph Paul, Comte de Grasse, Marquis of Grasse-Tilly. And the next senior, Chef d'Escadre, de Louis-Antoine de Bougainville. I hope I didn't mangle them too much. Now, here's my point. I'm just going to add this in. Chef d'Escadre becomes Contre-Admiral in 1791, so in about 9 years after this. Contre-Admiral roughly translates as Rear Admiral, but at this point, it sort of Chef d'Escadre. It can also be used for Commodore as for the Contre-Admiral, Rear Admiral. And actually, once you have Contre-Admiral come in and replace Chef d'Escadre, they then have to start working on a lower rank. The joy is these are two very experienced senior officers. And they're skilled, you know. This is the thing. The French do not have idiots. De Grasse had been involved in the Battle of Toulon in 1744, the First Battle of Cape Finisterre in 1747, taken part in the Battle of Ossant, the Battle of Grenada, invasion of Dominica, Battle of St. Lucia, Martinique, Fort Royal, Chesapeake, Yorktown, St. Kitts, and Saints is his last battle. Appropriate enough. De Bougainville, well, he's an explorer as well as a sort of a naval officer. He's a very interesting naval officer. He doesn't do as many battles, really, as De Grasse does, but he's a very competent, very confident sailor. And he's in many ways a contemporary of James Cook. He's earlier on made explorations into the Pacific, and apparently the first recorded settlement of the Falkland Islands. So yeah, Bougainville is who is responsible for most for that stuff. He's a fun guy to have. Now here's the thing: when we get on to looking at the French fleet, then you will see there is a lot of chef discards. And yeah, they do have. There are some interesting ones. Everyone has idiots, Melanie 6440, but in the case of the French Navy at this time and the Royal Navy at this time, most of those idiots get weeded out quickly or sent away to the North America station in the British case, and then they found their problems. Oh, caramba. Don't score down. Basically, I would agree with the concept that in 1940 the French were undone more by their politics. I would say more by the experience of World War One, the collective post-traumatic stress syndrome of Verdun, and the complete butchery of World War One. You have to remember, a lot of World War One was fought in France, and a lot of French died. And the fact is, you then have the people in charge in 1939, 1940 are mostly people who witnessed all that and didn't want to witness it again. They'd had enough of war. And there is a certain mind which thinks that after you've had enough of war, that if you just give in quickly enough, the enemy will go away and let you get on with your life. Sadly enough, not always not true. Thank never true. The French have a few out there, but they're not none of them in command. There's a few officers out there who, frankly, were interesting. But let's consider this. The British commanders. So, in command, we have Admiral George Rodney. This one. Second command, Vice Admiral Sir Samuel Hood. And, currently no picture available for him, third in command, Rear Admiral Sir Francis Samuel Drake, direct descendant of, yes, that other Drake. This is what the Royal Navy have sent to the Caribbean. Oh. Seriously, if I just seen those names coming towards me and I'd been French or Spanish, I'd have just gone, I'm off home now. See you all. Yeah. This is not fair. Not nice. Not kind. Where did they get them from? You could have at least sent someone as third in command who wasn't Drake. So, Rodney, of course, in terms of let's start off with Rodney. In terms of battles, started off with the Second Battle of Cape Finisterre. So, you know, him and the Grass are fairly temporary. Then the raid on Rochefort, raid on Le Havre, British blockade of France, the siege of Louisbourg, the British expedition against Martinique, the British expedition against Grenada, the British expedition against the Chua, the British expedition against Cuba, Battle of Cape Finisterre, the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, the Reef of Gibraltar, the Battle of Martinique, the invasion of Tobago, where he was part of the resistance, the Battle of Sens, of course, and he will then go on to the capture of St. Eustace in February 1781 as part of the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Then we got Samuel Hood, who fought at the Raid of Le Havre in the 7 Years' War, the Battle of Chesapeake, the Battle of Saints, and the Battle of Mona Passage. Then the Siege of Toulon and the invasion of Corsica. And yes, there is also an Alexander Hood and a Sasam and hang on. I think I've got the wrong hood up painting wise. Yes, I have. I had his brother saved as well, and I've managed to put up both. The wrong one. So that's fine. That's able to be dealt with. Give me a second, and I'll put the right hood up there. Hey, by gum. Right on. This is the correct hood now. That was his younger brother, who's another hood. There are a lot of hoods going on here. That is the other Samuel Hood. Too many hoods, too many hoods. And then we go on with Sir Francis Drake. Now, Francis was involved in the Battle of Quiberon Bay, invasion of Dominica, invasion of Martinique, Dutch West Indies campaign, capture of St. Eustace, Battle of Fort Royal, Battle of Chesapeake, Battle of St. Kitts, and the Battle of the Saints. He had been born in 1729. He would die in 1789, and was Rear Admiral of the Red. I don't know. Unfortunately, no pictures exist of either of them, of him. So, you know, annoying. And there's your British commanders. There weren't. Mm-hmm. Let's see. The same could be said of the British senior officers in World War II. They ever didn't flee their command post 30 miles behind the line without telling anyone and take artillery too. No, but to be fair, and this is going to sound something strange again, the British didn't manage to send their A team because that was what the BEF was built around. You've seen what's happened in various wars where they didn't have their A team. That's good. I'm sure they're equally brave officers in the French army, but there are plenty who should never have gotten to that position. Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing. General Fletcher. Dan, could Nelson have beaten the Americans in the War of 1812, though? Yes, Nelson would have. In nicest way, the admiral who was taking over was fighting the Americans towards the end of the War of 1812. Was merrily wiping out most of the American opposition. The British basically went, we have a decent admiral there. Your command now includes the entire North American station. Thank you. Go have fun. Yes, we'll do. He was raising his own regiments of Marines, planning amphibious invasions, had his own economy running. He was taking over a section of the world. He was basically proving that the East India Company didn't necessarily have to be the East India Company to be working. Which one gave their name to a ship? This one. Just think in the future they can just pull all the pictures of the admirals from their Facebook profiles. Tempting. Tempting. There's actually George Hannibal Rodney, Sam Faceman Hood, and Francis Bad Attitude Drake. It wasn't good for anyone to be involved out here. If you were French or Spanish, this was not a combination you wanted heading your direction. That's good. Read the War of 1812, War of the Lakes, 1814-15, British Commander. Enough of this nonsense, I'm building a massive first rate. Oh, it works. Look at how much firepower I have. Everyone else going, oh, great. Who gave him that? So, let's consider the French fleet. Now, this slightly more, I'm trying two different techniques to work out which is the better table style for this. So this is me having put it in various, how do I put this, Excel spreadsheets. Now, their ships are mostly 74s. You've got Hercule, Neptune, Sovereign, Palmia, Northumberland. Yes, by the way, the French had a ship called Northumberland. The reason they had it, they'd captured a previous British Royal Navy ship called HMS Northumberland, and then they'd replaced her with another one when she stopped being useful, called Northumberland as well. They kept the name going. It wasn't just the Royal Navy which captured names and then went, you know what, we like this name, we're going to keep it. But Bougainville is on the Auguste, an 80-gun, second rate. And then there's the Ardent, a 64-gun, which would be captured. And is part of the 1st Division of the Escadre Bleu, or the Blue Squadron. Then there's the Escadre Blanche, the White Squadron, the middle. Again, 3rd Division up front, 1st Division in the middle, 2nd Division at the back. And this will face most of the heavy fighting. It has the Ville de Paris, 104 guns in it. Yeah. It also has the Hector and the Glorieux, all of which will be captured. And it's mostly 74 guns. There is a 70 gun though there, and a 64 gun. And then we have the Escadre Blanche et Bleu. So the white and blue is how I put it, which is under the Espinouse. Now, the reason I haven't listed Espinouse as the third in command is whilst they're listed as the squadron commander, there is also a Marquis de Vaudreuil, who is also a chef d'escadre, who is part of this, the first division of this, but is listed as, and would normally you'd think the person in the first division would be in charge, but is listed as the third in command of the fleet, but not not in command of the squadron. The person in charge of the squadron is in Coronis Espinouse, who's in the second division of the Escadre Blanche et Bleu, on the Duc de Bourgogne, which is an 80-gun ship. Marcus de Vaudreuil is also on the Triumphant, another 80-gun ship. Basically, the French are trying to give me a panic attack here because they have 3 officers of theoretically Rear Admiral rank or Senior Commodore rank wandering around, of which 2 are listed as squadron commanders. 1 is there, and some sources list him as the third in command, and other sources don't mention him at all, but we know he's there. I know what's happened is the French are picking up squadrons of ships from multiple docks. I know the French have the problem that they do come from all over the place, and they are... I'm not sure where I've got the phrase. I did put it somewhere. There we go, there it is. They are a reflection of the geographically imposed decentralization form of the French Navy. But still. And I'm sending this back several hundred years in time, and I'm hoping that by the time I wake up tomorrow, history will have changed magically. This is my appeal to the French Navy of the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. And it's a sincere one. Get your bleeding act together and start working out a chain of command. You might actually stand a chance against the British if you have a freaking chain of command. Because I can point to the battles where you have a senior commander who can basically shoot people if they don't do what he tells them to. And those tend to be the battles you do at least quite well in, and some you even win in. And the battles where you have a whole muddy command structure is when the Royal Navy tends to take you apart. We're talking about the Battle of the Saints, and you can guess where I'm going with this one. So, Johnson, one of the great advantages of the Great Lakes that has been forgotten is it's an amazing proving ground for almost every part of the world's waterways. True. But more importantly, David, what people forget about the Great Lakes is that it's beautiful patches of water, which are very, very deep. Dub Squad, when the question is who gave the French Navy fill in the blank, the answer is usually the French, not entirely winning. Occasionally it's the Dutch, often it's the Spanish, and sometimes it's the Danish. It's a bit illegible on the screen. Sorry. Yeah, it's too small to read on my Kindle. We will... Yeah. Well, you see, I was basically being told I needed to make it more differentiated so it was sort of more easily grouped. But I agree, I think that looks a bit... So this is my traditional methodology, and this is how I got the British laid out. So there's the French. There's the British. I think the British myself is easier. At 18 minutes, Jamaica, tobacco, sugar, rum equals strategic supplies. There you do. Mercy to Chain of Command. Is that the one you wrap around our legs before throwing them overboard? That would work quite well. Currently 1.5. We'll switch up when Dr. Clark opens another account. You're in luck, Dirt Squad. Another can it is. No, okay, Dirt Squad. No, it's the chain that leader beats you until you realize who's in damn command it. That would work. I do like the traditional one. I think the traditional one's more legible as well. So on this one, please note that Rear Admiral Francis Samuel Drake has chosen to put himself in a 70-gun ship. Now he has a reason for this. He was at the rear, and he thought the only chance he'd have for getting action, because they were going to be fighting, is chasing down the French after the battle. And not that he was living up to his name at all, he decided the 98-gun Prince George would be a little bit too slow for his tastes. So yeah, it's the 70-gun third rate HMS Princessa with a lot of extra sails, just in case he needs to make close and personal contact with any French ships he can get hold of. You'll notice that there does seem to be a number of second rates. There is no equivalent to the Ville de Paris on 104, but there are a fair number of 98 guns and 90 guns. In that there are two... Yeah, there are 4 98-gun ships and 1 90-gun ship. So there's some fairly hefty vessels going on here. The British have no 50 guns. The French 50s don't get counted in this list either. They're also the lowest the British have there are 64s. Honestly, they're the older third rates they're trying to get rid of. And you can see what I mean about this war being about the third rates. If you've ever listened to us talking on bilge pumps about the modern rating system, you will often hear me saying that, yeah, first rates are great. We'd like a couple of them. Second rates are lovely. You do want a couple of them. You do, especially if you're a superpower. You need a few of them. But most wars are fought by third rates. And they are the balance of cost versus firepower that we can produce in sufficient numbers. So start transferring that across, and pretty much you get, well, honestly, if you put the Mark 41 VLS tubes there are space for on the Type 45s, those would be a third rate, a modern third rate. There are lots of ships around there which could be a modern third rate if you just put them up there. And that makes sense because, again, the British, there are lots of studies, and they know that's how many missiles and how many silos they'll need. The trouble is they couldn't get paid for, so they were fitted for but not with. And there are lots of ships which these days are fitted for but not with enough cells which would take them up to roughly third rate area. And I know we have the American Arleigh Burkes, which with their various cells are probably closer to are in the first rate section, but that's the Americans. They like to be there. Henry, the clock. Rule the wave so you can live out your fantasy of playing as Admiral Henderson. Basically, when I get some money, I'm going to actually try and get a copy of Rule the Waves and start building some ships, because there are some that I know the designs of which weren't built, which I would like to see how they perform, and I think I could do them in that, and do them justice in that. Some Golding, the Caribbean campaign of the Revolutionary War is fascinating and so understudied. One of the few times you see frigates standing in line of battle from the start. Mm-hmm. That's got Drake wanted to take after his namesake and do a bit of sanctioned piracy of the French fleet? Pretty much. Now I have a vision of the montage of the Prince's crew hammering and splicing to add sails with a certain theme tune in the background. Pretty much. Why does HMS Formidable have 2 captains? Well, that's an interesting thing. Okay, as you can tell, Formidable is the flagship of Admiral Sir George Rodney. Now, he's got Captain Sir Charles Douglas and Second Captain Charles Simmons. This is because he has both a ship's captain and a flag captain, and he has the roles in a way sort of divided. And pretty much this is because he's running a staff. He's got a staff going. He's got a bit of a staff for his fleet. It's a powerful second rate, but it doesn't need a second captain for that level of power. But what he does need, when he's running a fleet of 36 ships, is someone to as a chief of staff. So, the next time someone tells you that the Royal Navy doesn't understand staff work or doesn't understand the need of staff, you can tell them this. They did used to have staff officers. Even in the Age of Sail, they used to sometimes put in staffs. They'd have extra officers on the flagships. They would have the flag lieutenants. They would have, sometimes, for senior admirals who could get away with it, they would have a second captain. You can also say that the Royal Navy abjectly doesn't understand the need for most of the staff training that goes on, and therefore was, as we were talking about with Prince Philip the other night. Sorry, magpie flew away. He did the staff post, and then he did the staff course. Welcome to the Royal Navy. You also look at these names. You've got Royal Oak. You've got Alfred, Montague, Yarmouth, Valiant, Barfleur, Monarch, Warrior, Bellinghus, Centaur, Magnificent, Prince William, Bedford, Ajax, Repulse, Canada, St. Albans, Namur, Duke, Formidable, Agamemnon, Resolution, Prophet, Hercules, America. Yes, there's HMS America here, fighting for the British. As America so often does, fighting for the British. Under the command of Captain Samuel Thompson. So, Stafford, if you just changed your name slightly, you'd have been in Captain of America. Or Captain America, depending on your perspective. And then there's the rear, which was actually 11 ships. Russell, Fame, Anson, Torbay, Prince George, Princessa, Conqueror, Nonsuch, Alcide, Arrogant, and Marlborough. It's fun. It's always fun to have them around. And it's a good crew. You look through these captains and you're going, there's George Bowen, Anthony Barrell, Samuel Granson Goodall. I can't remember. I wonder who Samuel Granson Goodall is a forebear of. Now, where have we heard the name Goodall before? And then there's Burnett, Bain, Francis Reynolds, James Wallace, Andrew Sutherland, John Nicholas Inglefield, Robert Lindsay. Now, many of you won't realise that we all know Robert Lindsay, who started off playing a captain, eventually got to Admiral in the Hornblower series. Well, I was always very happy with him playing an officer in Age of Sail, because look here, there is an actual Robert Lindsay in charge of HMS Magnificent at the Battle of Saints. You then have Captain George Wilkinson. There is on HMS Bedford. There is Commodore Edmund Affleck and Captain Thomas Graves. Now, interesting enough, why does he have a Commodore there? Well, because they have a Commodore because they realize, rather like with any scenario, Admiral Sir George Rodney might well have issues. He might need another senior officer. He might get he might be focused on because of his huge, great big flag by the French, and someone else might need to take command of the centre. So there's a Commodore there. It's almost like the Royal Navy plan for the problems of losing ships and actually have a fourth in command. It's fun. And then you have Nicholas Charrington, Thomas Dursk, William Cornwallis. Can't think who he's a relative of. Charles Inglis, Robert Farnshaw, Alan Gardner, Benjamin Caldwell, Lord Robert Manners, Charles Buckner, Captain Henry Savage, who would be wounded in action. And actually, there's the fact that the commander of Captain William Bain of HMS Alfred is actually killed on the 9th of April. Captain Samuel Thompson, as said, of HMS America. Captain James Samures. Captain Robert Barber. Captain William Blair. Blair is killed in action as well. Captain John Lewis Gideon. Captain James William. And Captain George Balfour. Can't think who he's a forebear for. Who needs a fourth in command? Well, as I said, the Royal Navy have structured in so there's a Commodore Edmund Affleck in the centre, and not too far from Sir George Rodney, in case anything happens to Rodney. So they have 4 senior officers to command the fleet, and they know in what happens. You die, I take command. You die, I die, you don't take command. You die, he takes command. This sort of structure. Captain William Truscott, Captain Charles Thompson, Captain Samuel Pitchford Cornish, and Captain Taylor Penny. This is a very distinguished fleet. You can go through those captains. The Royal Navy has sent their A-team. This is a scary force. Dan Freeman, the lack of symmetry from having the van, centre and rear be 12, 13, 11 ships rather than the uniform 12 each is making me twitch a lot. Well, some sources actually do claim there were 12 each, but in the book which I'm relying on, it goes 12, 13, and 11, so it makes sense to an extent. It fits with the battle plan. I do have a shirt for it. Not sure if I can let the family history go with the name change, though. Every gen has had a Stafford. I'm just the first in a long line for a first name. Oh. Alright, although I may be about to convince my brother to name our skiff America. Well, you have Project HMS America, third rate, Captain Samuel Thompson. Look out the. I think I've got a picture of her somewhere. Yeah. Let's see if this works. I do have a picture of a Captain for America. So, well, I have her plans. Hopefully that counts for a picture. She has a nice little third rate. Nothing too massive. Let's see. And let's get her up. Change the picture to America. Hello. Not sure if that's still working. Hopefully it is. I think it froze for a second there. Oh, she's coming out tiny. There you go. There is HMS America. Hello. I think she's a good little ship. She's a third rate. Animits can do Animits can do things that Kirov cannot, but they can kill each other. That was good. Yep. Though the issue to Kirovs is that only 1 yard in Russia can build them, so they've not got the numbers they really need. By the time the fifth is built, the first and second will be effectively retired because they'll be too old to be economically viable to keep in workable order. I think they've already gone, the first and second. Speaking of experience on modern warships, at least, if you have 2 Thompsons coming for you on warships, run. Don't think, just run. Well, this is the ship that Captain Samuel Thompson wanted. This is the design of her. She's a gorgeous-looking ship. Some more that's come home? I wouldn't say so. That's, the style of the battle tone. She is a very nice little ship. And you can find that picture, actually. I will admit that picture I picked up from the Wikipedia. That's where I found. I was looking around, going through the various ships, and went, "Ooh, well, I will have to have a picture of that because I thought Stafford might be watching. I thought you'd enjoy that one." So here is the Battle of the Saints, and as we can see, they actually get together eventually on the 12th. But as I was going through earlier, it really does start off earlier. In that there's a reason why we usually talk about it from the 9th to the 12th. And sometimes from the 7th to the 12th. Anyway. So, as you can see, the wind is coming from the east. It's a fresh easterly breeze. And theoretically, this should be helping the French. Unfortunately for the French, what happens is they get a bit disorganized. And well, Hood does what Hood does and carries on. Rodney spots a gap and sails for it and breaks up the French fleet. And, well, Drake is a Drake. You can see what happens there. So all those who go, breaking the line, that's something which, Nelson was the one who came up with. I'm sorry, this is 1782, this is the Battle of Saints, and there is a lot of people breaking the line here. The blue dots decided to run away. There is also the option that it could be my maths. Let's see. Let's go back. I've put in third rate 74 for that. Let me check Wikipedia in my notes. No. America should be a 64. That's my own typing. This is how you can tell I type these things up myself. There are typos. I'm sorry, I hadn't checked that. I spotted that one. That's the trouble when you have 74s and 64s. So, let's talk through this battle and what happens. Now, at 7:40, now what happens is quite simple. They have a first encounter on the 9th of April, really. The British fleet caught up the French. And Admiral de Grasse dispatches the convoy to Guadeloupe for repair. With 52, well, his two 50-gun ships, he needs to be escorted, basically. In the first action, and this was, I think, on the 9th, yes, HMS Alfred decided to taunt the French by exposing her broadside to the approaching French without any consequence, just blasting away merrily. About that, basically, she was almost crossing their T. The British waited to fire until they were told to by Rodney, who was 6 miles behind, and eventually started to fire. Engage the enemy, and the French basically fell back after a nice melee. The first melee on the 9th of April, the French outnumbered the British 2-1 because the British hadn't all managed to join the battle by the time the battle was over. And interestingly enough, Captain William Bain of the Alfred is killed during this action. After this inconclusive encounter, de Grasse breaks off because he realizes the British fleet would soon be coming up. This is the trouble when you're moving these massive sort of fleets. It's getting them to actually in the same place to engage each other. On the 12th of April, the two fleets have maneuvered to engage again. They're in the Dominica and Saint, northern end of Dominica and Saints, and sort of in the Saints Passage, which is why it's called the Battle of Saints. The French had suffered some collisions during the night with the Zélé, managing to bash into the Ville de Paris. And that had to be then towed to Basse-Terre by Astrée, with General Dubourg aboard. They were to be chased by Monarch, Valiant, Censure, and Bellignou. Basically, the British sent 4 ships to hunt them down. De Grasse made for Guadeloupe, and with the aim of protect the ship. And Rodney recalls the chasing ships and orders a line of battle. Hood's van division were actually still being repaired from the earlier battles, so he was put into the rear, and Drake was put into the front. At 7:40, Marlborough, under Captain Taylor Penny, this is at 7:40 a.m., I think, led the British line in open battle when she approached the centre of the French line. Having remained parallel to the French, the ships of Drake's division passed the remaining length of the grass line, exchanging broadsides in a sort of typical naval engagement, i.e. line on line. As the French line passed down the British line, a sudden shift in wind led Rodney's flagship Formidable and the Duke and Bedfords to sail towards the French line. This shift in the wind, as you can see in the second picture, and by the way, this graphic is nicked from Wikipedia, I do admit, but we all know my drawing skills are terrible, so this was an option, so I'm using it. Allowed them to break the French line. At 8 a.m., Formidable raised the Reg flag to permit Marlborough to open fire and engage the French. And Marlborough at this point was opposite the Dauphin Royal, who received her full broadside. 16 ships in line separated Marlborough from Formidable, and each stood 200 meters apart. As each circled past the French, they fired a broadside against them. And behind Marlborough was HMS Arrogant, who had recently been re-equipped and managed 3 broadsides against 1 from the ship of French as they passed, because her new guns were so much better and her crews were so well trained. So for every 1 broadside they received, they were taking off 3. Third in line was HMS Alcide under Captain Charles Thompson. Then followed HMS Nonsuch under Captain Truscott, and then HMS Conqueror under Captain George Balfour. Next in line was Admiral Drake on HMS Princessa, who was in command of the first 12 vessels, and followed by Prince George under Captain Williams. Then came the 100-year-old HMS Torbay under Captain Keppel, and the year-old HMS Anson under Captain William Blair on the main deck, who was struck by a shot at waist level and sliced in 2. And here's something for a young captain. HMS Resolution was under the command of Captain Robert Manners, a 24-year-old officer who'd already served almost a dozen years in the Navy, I think, by this point, and would later die of the wounds he received that day. The wind kept shifting backwards and forwards, and it allowed the Royal Navy to really break through the French line. And they keep fighting and pressing the French as hard as they can. And they're bringing a lot of ships to bear. By forcing the French line to separate on Behring West, it allowed the British to use guns on both sides of their ships without fear of return fire from the front and rear of the French ships, between which they were passing, whilst the French had to be slightly more careful because they weren't sure whether they'd hit a British ship or a French ship. Added to this was the fact that they managed to get to such close ranges. You have to remember that artillery duels were the rule of the day in these sort of battles. But they had got very, very close, and the British, alongside all the cannons which they are pierced for, which are the numbers that are officially listed, most ships were carrying 12 to 24 carronades as well, which are incredibly powerful short-range weapons. And as you can see, the ranges you're getting to in this second panel are really not good for short-range engagements. Now, Glorio, which is following Ville de Paris and under command of Captain Necars, was pounded to 10 minutes by Duke. So in 10 minutes, HMS Duke reduced her to this masted intense fireball, basically. The actual breaking of the French line was when the confusion forced 4 French ships, actually to fire on Glorieux, forced 4 French ships to break their sequence, led by Diadem, which opened up a nice big gap, which Formidable then sailed straight through. The breach was followed by 5 other British ships passing through, and it's arguable that the concept of breaking line is born here. The thing is, many of the French sailors suddenly saw Formidable's 3 lines of three decks of guns bearing down on them and not being able to fire back, and for some reason decided they wanted to be elsewhere rather than near a load of explosives. So it caused a lot of panic in the French fleet. At this point, simultaneously, Commodore Edmund Affleck on Bedford, the hindmost ship of the Central White Squadron, accidentally sailed through the French squadron. And when I say accidentally, he hadn't officially been given an order by anyone and was the most junior of the senior officers. So he accidentally sailed through the enemy line. And Rodney afterwards accidentally bought him dinner and gave him a rather nice bottle of wine. It's all an accident, you know. Unfortunately, he found that once he'd sailed through the line, that no enemy lay on his starboard side in the clearing smoke. So he then had to carry on up them and basically double line them. This meant that the French line was now broken in 3 sections. This point, Prince William and Magnificent suddenly managed to get past Bedford. Again, no idea how this happens. You know, they're keeping to line. They're being British. They're very much keeping to their queue position. They're not jumping at all. And managed to fight and get up to various French ships. And so the whole Red Squadron then passes between Caesar and Hector slowly, pounding them quite happily. This is not a good time to be these ships. At a certain point, the French decide to retreat, and the thing is, at a certain point, Ville de Paris is in a desperate condition. She's lost all masts, her rudder's been shot away, 300 men dead or injured, and at 6 p.m. that evening, she strikes her colours and signals surrender. Hood then goes up on Barfleur and accepts the surrender. However, please note, Hood decided he wasn't sure the Grass was actually surrendering, so he orders another broadside just to make sure before boarding. Which is why the Grass officially surrenders to Rodney, because he refuses with Hood a bit. So officially what happens is that well, the boarding crew, horrified by the carnage, come along and include Hood. But the grass pretty much says, I refuse to surrender to you because you have no honor. Luckily, Rodney joins not long afterwards, and Hood then presents the grass to him, and the grass surrenders to Rodney. The interesting thing is, of course, is William Cornwallis's Canada, in a tradition that would basically set the example for the Royal Canadian Navy, had fought particularly vicious in the battle, and many felt that it was to expunge the dishonour suffered by his elder brother, who had, of course, been defeated at Yorktown. Well, no, elder brother at Yorktown. At 9 p.m. that night, fire broke out on Caesar, begun by entrapped French crew on the lower decks. And the magazine explodes, killing 400 French and 58 British sailors, plus the lieutenant in charge, all from HMS Censure. Believe it or not, Rodney is criticised after this battle. Now, this is the battle which also causes the arguments between Rodney and Hood. But before we get into that, we're going to go down. The questions. So, okay. Arglyph, some of the blue dots decided to embrace their fate and become red dots. That's good. Aaron, only you kindly left the gap for me to make my left turn. It would be rude not to accept your gracious offer. Also, wrong serious. I know what you mean about Drake. My step siblings are of his line. Cajun, Admiral Drake, they're running away. That's not fair. No, it wasn't considered fair. There's a whole lot of math jokes going on. I'm not jumping into those. Nick Waters, now I'm curious now. Anyone here written or expanded corrected naval Wikipedia articles? I encourage my students to, because I consider it a good way to practice for academic publishing, but I don't do it myself because, how do I put this? I have the opportunity to write books and newspaper articles and magazine articles and do these sort of things. I think if I start doing Wikipedia as well, I'm kind of muscling out other people who, for many whom Wikipedia might be their first entry into starting a historical career. So I encourage other people to do Wikipedia. Aaron, you'd probably be pretty arrogant too if you could fire 3 balls once your enemy's 1. Yeah, that does sort of is going. They fired, bang, bang, bang. You're gonna fire again? There's not many of us left to fire. This isn't fair. Mercenary older ships was this common. She was about the oldest ship in service at this point, but it wasn't uncommon. No, ships could be maintained. Wooden ships, if maintained well, would often do a century or more in service. It's one of the reasons why you can afford to build up such large navies in the age of sail. So he hadn't been told not to do it then. Pretty much, that was what was wrong. And like Rommel accidentally reached the coast in 1940. Yeah. That's good. Whoops, did I end up in this massively technically advantageous position? Guess I should probably stay here now that I'm here. This was, it was an interesting battle. As you can see from these maps, the French kind of get broken in three places. You sort of look at there is the ship, there is the single ship up at the top, which is basically going, we're past the French. They're there. That's the line. Come back, French! You're not getting away from me! Then there's Rodney in the middle. And then there's Drake sort of somewhere in there and Hood somewhere in there going, hello, we found you. We'd like to say hello. Basically, de Grasse felt Hood had no honor because de Grasse had struck and Hood sails up on Barfleur, and Barfleur fires on Hood's order. They fire another salvo into Ville de Paris to make sure that basically that they've struck when they'd already struck. So in de Grasse's view, that's no honor. Thousand. Search YouTube for Space Wars gear. You know, young people might watch us. That's like that. Like, oh, totally forgot your live tonight. Oh, don't worry. Rebuilding from well, there are two. There is the long refit and the short refit. The long refit is basically a rebuild from scratch. But you have to remember the Royal Navy wasn't allowed new ships, so they do a long refit. Seriously, rebuilding basically was scratch from scratch was a repair rather than buying a new ship. So easy to get money for. Yes, they would call it the long refit. As I said, look at the level of rebuild done to some of the interwar battleships like Warspite or the Italian ones of HSN. Yeah. We are just refitting a ship. Just a refit. Not an entire rebuild. It's still got see that plaque there. That's part of the original ship. See, it's the original ship. Still got the same nameplate. Actually, sir, it's not. Don't tell them that. What subjects won the patron polls? I will have to track those down. They're actually no, they're listed. I think I've got them on. I've got them scheduled. Anyway, carrying on with the battle. So the result of the battle not particularly good if you're anyone else really. Hood felt that he could have captured 20 French ships if Rodney had maintained the chase. And in 1899, there is apparently a biography, but there is a poem purportedly written by William Cornwallis, which said, "Had a chief worthy Britain commanded our fleet, 25 good friendships had been laid at our feet." Now, it's a nice idea to think you'd have captured 20 French ships, but the odds are you wouldn't have. Now, on the 17th of April, Hood was sent in pursuit of the French and did manage to capture 2 more ships, Jason and Catton, and 2 smaller warships in the Battle of Mona Passage on the 19th of April. Hood then rendezvoused with Rodney on the 29th of April at Port Royal and needed a repair. But it's one of the things, it's a nice thing to say, yes, we could have captured a lot more ships if we chased them. But how damaged were the ships you were dealing with already? The French retreated to Cape Francois and Waves, and well, they'd lost their commander, they'd lost a lot of senior officers, and a lot of their better ships. On the 26 French ships from the battle managed to make Martinique, and they were soon joined by 12 Spanish ships. Unfortunately, at this point, disease starts hitting the soldiers, and thousands of them die. It also hits the sailors. And later, for the British, though, the battle sort of has another effect on their fleet, because some months later, when Admiral Graves, who had been in charge of the North America station and was not considered necessarily the best admiral, but decided to was leading the fleet, leading a fleet including the French prizes back from this battle back to Britain. They encountered the 1782 Central Atlantic Hurricane off Newfoundland, and Glorieux, Hector, and Ville de Paris, along with a few other British ships, were foundered or sunk with lots of lives lost. So, long term, lots of lives lost afterwards. More importantly, this battle has impacts. The loss of Ville de Paris, which was supposed to be undefeatable, was a particular blow to Louis XVI, although frankly he's Louis XVI. The various French officers range from thinking it to a grim disaster to undermining the soul and confidence of the French Navy. All the blame was apparently laid on Comte de Grasse. He tried to clear his name by blaming his subordinates, de Vendres and Bougainville, for the defeat, but he was ordered to retire by Louis XVI. He'd been the best admiral they'd had, and then he has a loss and he basically gets kicked out of the Navy. For France, you must remember this whole mission had been about making money, and it certainly did make money for someone, mainly British sailors and admirals. On Ville de Paris alone, apparently, enough money was found to be equivalent of £500,000 in that day. So that was the pay for the troops, apparently, had been taken aboard the flagship, which is lovely. The various Royal Navy officers and sailors were very happy with this £500,000. You can all work out what £500,000 in 1782 was worth. Today it would be worth in modern money. I'm not sure, but I think it'd be several million, and that's of course split up quite happily. And let's be honest, Rodney was given a £2,000 a year settled title, a settlement, and a title in perpetuity, as well as being created a peer and presented Comte de Grasse personally to King George III as a prisoner. Hood was elevated to the peerage, and Drake and Affleck were both made their own baronets themselves, which is all nice. It has an impact on peace negotiations, of course. Up to this point, the Americans have been feeling fairly confident about everything. They'd won it all. It was wonderful. They could dictate. They wanted Canada. They wanted Newfoundland. They wanted this. And after this battle, they're going, oh, and the British are going, yeah, you might want to scale back your demands. We're happy to give you the 13 colonies because, frankly, you cost money and are annoying. But you're not getting any of the rest. At which point the Americans go, okay, all right. And peace is eventually agreed. And of course, impact on naval tactics. Well, how do I put this? It hammers home to British the importance of gunnery drill, of both accuracy and speed rate of fire. And of course, it's famous as the innovative starting point of breaking line. But actually, that was also something which had happened a bit before, and there had been various issues where they tried to break the line and cross the enemy's T, had been part of it. Also, there was the fact that Niels Joule had done this before in the Battle of Courge Bay about 100 years earlier, as apparently Michael de Ruyter had done something similar in the 4 Days Battle in 1666. What it does do is it changes the British from being so wedded to the line. The concept changes to the British thinking about local superiority, i.e., concentrating their ships at certain points in a force. So from this point onwards, they stop thinking, we will spread our ships out evenly, to, right then, we need to make sure the enemy can't do it to us, but we have to think of a way to concentrate our strength against the enemy in a way which means we can blast them more than they can blast us. And that's really how they start to win the battles. Let's see. And Freeman, look at the level of rebuild done. I'll talk about that earlier. Carl when will the RN do that? The Type 23 again, Type 45? Maybe they have the same, but probably not. They've got the Type 83s coming. Type 26s are being built. The Type 31s are ordered. The Type 32s are being talked about. The RN's got enough stuff coming. They don't need to do this, man. Although, if you've seen the Type 23s, you'll know they've pretty much been through this to keep them going. That's why their hulls have changed so radically over their career. It's totally not a new ship, just new engines, new armor, new deck, new fire control, new armaments, except the gun turrets. They just got a total refurb. Yeah, exactly the same HMS Warspite. Aptly named Fever Islands from an up. Yep. And that's good. Also, how many of your ships might you lose without gain if you chase that into the Caribbean with your damaged ships rather than making for port to repair? That is what Rodney probably thought, because Rodney was practical. I will say this, Hood's descendant was far better, I would say, at strategy than necessarily he was. I would guess it's still roughly £1 of sterling equals £1 of actual silver. Sterling devaluation seems to be about 20th century thing. And this I suspect several tens of millions. Yes, I'm expecting a lot. I'm thinking it's a lot of money. I was trying to work out what it would in today's money, and I had a figure, but the nearest estimate I have from based on CPI inflation for today is roughly 88 million. And that was just the money found in one ship. That's a good few credits. And that's the other thing he has to secure. In the nicest way, he has a whole load of sailors who are looking at him going, that's our futures in there. Nick Waters, I'm always amazed that a ship damaged enough to give up fighting was ever seaworthy enough to be for repairing. And that's the thing, Nick. Again, some of them would go in for major refits. But the thing is, as they were repairing a captured ship, that was again allowed. It strikes me that the French and Americans had the same attitude to good admirals who lost the odd fight. Instead, the RN viewed it, one loss doesn't make a bad admiral. 500,072 is worth 84,940. I think that's I saw that figure for 2020. And when I had worked it out to 2021, it sort of went about to 87. So yeah, roughly that. 88, it's 87, close enough to 88. I decided 88. Common tactic. Grape shot to the sails, grape shot to the decks. Usually, actually, not so much grape shot to the sails. Grape shot to the decks, chain shot to the sails. Take out the masts. You could repair a mast fairly easy. Yowza. Then you mean Hood rushes into danger and might come across it? Tony will try to pass on. Actually, this is going to sound strange, but I will say that, in my opinion, the Hood who is in command of 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron is a far better admiral than this Hood was. And he was trying his best to get 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron up to a standard he was satisfied. You have to remember, he'd been in charge of the Dover Patrol first and had done an absolutely amazing job in charge of the Dover Patrol. Admiral Hood, who dies in World War One, is a very, very good admiral. And honestly, if I'd had my choice for commander of the battlecruiser force, it would have been him over Beatty every single day of the week. Because he is one of the best admirals going at that time. And he was actually, this is the interesting thing, if Hood had still been around when Beatty is promoted to Grand Fleet Commander, Hood would have probably been made the battlecruiser commander. Dan Freeman was thinking more of the battlecruiser hood rather than the person. That I would agree with. That I would agree with. Hello, Rapid Race back. That's better. Aren't there multiple people you've chosen over BT? There are many people I have chosen over BT. I would choose over BT, but if I had my first choice, it would probably be Hood. Cajun, that's unsurprising. I usually don't think BT should be left in charge of a canoe. Is the canoe on land? And is BT sober? These are important questions for that one, Cajun. Long term, as I said, the big thing about this battle is it gives the British options. It gives justification for breaking lines, and it sets a tradition of what's going on. Now, actually, I am going to do a couple of books because I have got some new books to talk about, and I wanted to talk about them in do a sort of bit of a book review, a little bit of a brew ships, and then I will go back to my sister's birthday party. Remember, does anyone rank lower in the Pantheon of Iron Admirals than BT? I'm not a big fan of Sturdy. There are a few RN Admirals I would be quite happy to vamoose. Honestly, BT does, at least through accident rather than intention, win some battles. So this is the point. He does have Dogger Bank. Amazingly has Dogger Bank. By sheer dint of luck has Dogger Bank. So you can't put him quite at the bottom. Corpses you choose over BT? No. Is the corpse Admiral Collingwood? Maybe. I'm not saying definitely his dead, decaying body could do a better job than BT, but I'd give it a shot. Certainly give it a shot. So, I've got to make a new brew ship slide. Ooh. Well, hang on. I can have one of those made up in a second. I have that already there. So this computer is going to need a new slide for that. Right, brew ships. See, it works. So this is now the brew ship section. Yay! Put it up there. And I've got a couple of books which I'm going to do in this section. Raceback. If the canoe is on land and there are bigger issues at work. If BT's drunk, yes, I'll leave him in charge of the canoe. He'll be asleep. Be safe. If he's sober and awake, possibly not. Hello, Constantinople. I'm just reading D.K. Brown, and he doesn't seem a fan of Jellicoe's either, nor Fisher. There are many reasons not to be a fan, but Jellicoe's fairly decent, but he does like to mess around with the constructors. Adrian, you've missed the chance to malign Cork and Ornery. That's because I try and forget Cork and Ornery exist completely. BT, I just annoy and I'm annoyed by, and frankly, I don't think should be command. Cork and Ornery, I honestly do not think should have reached captain and have retired from the service with full honor, because after that point, for some reason, he goes completely nuts. Grace Nelson, Nelson's corpse over BT would definitely have done better, if only because of the motivating effect on crews. Don't put Sturdy in charge. You couldn't wait a year to give it a nice round. Nope. I'm going to be probably will be talking about more about the Battle of Saints next year, but I wanted to do it this year. So, first book. Breaking Seas, Broken Ships. People, Shipwrecks, Britain, 1854 to 2007 by Ian Friel. It's a pretty darn cool book. I've looked at similar books before, but the reason I've got this is because it has HMS Victoria in here, and it was sent to me to review by the lovely people at Pen and Sword. So it gives you the full story of HMS Victoria. If Complacency may have helped sink the Russell, then other kinds of folly sank HMS Victoria. The Victoria was sunk in a collision with another British warship in the Eastern Mediterranean on 23rd of June, 1893. The collision was the fault of Vice Admiral Sir George Rodney, Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Fleet, who flew his flag as Admiral in the Victoria. However, the disaster was aided and abetted by a number of senior officers who failed to question the mistaken order that led to the tragedy. 363 of his crew perished, but among the 291 survivors was a man who normally worked in the bows of the ship and stood at the opposite end of the chain of command from Tyrone, the stoker second class James Curran. It's sometimes said the tragedy repeats itself as a farce, but in Curran's case it was repeated for entertainment and profit, as he took stage and recounted his tale in a late Victorian multimedia show. The stories of these two men and on Victoria have a lot to say about the Navy, the nation, and naval warfare in the years leading up to the First World War. Understandably, earlier studies of the sinking of Victoria have focused on the failings of Tyrone and the other officers, and the confused contemporary ideas about naval warfare that contributed to tragedy. And the story has other dimensions, one of them captured by the Portsmouth Evening News on Saturday, 24th June. News Ives was still awaited at dockyard gates by a considerable number of relatives of crew, who, with tear-stained faces and eyes swollen by prolonged weeping, had been in attendance at the main entrance of the establishment since the early morning, watching for the appearance of the official communication which would disclose the face of their loved ones. George Tyrone came from an old established Northamptonshire gentry family and joined the Navy as an officer cadet at the age of 15. He served distinction in the Crimean War. In 1861 was one of the officers of HMS Warrior, the original British ironclad. Clever and experienced, Tyrone had a distinguished career in the Navy. He reached the rank of Rear Admiral in 1884, was knighted in 1887. Amongst other things, he reorganised the defence of the Royal Navy's Australia Station, and in Britain set up a Naval Intelligence Committee that would later evolve into the Naval Intelligence Department. In public, he raised the thorny issue of government insurance of sea trade in wartime, something that became a matter of desperate urgency in a little more than 20 years after his death. Tyrone believed that the Victorian Navy had become over-reliant on a complex system of signalling that stifled the initiative and daring of individual commanders and would serve the fleet badly in wartime. Can't think how he was proved correct. As he pointed out, random shots in battle could take out signal flags or signalers, making it impossible for a fleet commander to transmit orders. His innovative approach was known as TA. After a signal code that signified that the captain should observe the movements of the admiral's ship in a squadron and be prepared to copy them with or without signals. Tyrone went on to train the Mediterranean fleet in TA.
In his classic study of the Royal Navy from the Victorian era to the Great War, The Rules of the Game, Andrew Gordon points out the paradox that Tyrion's immense knowledge and ability, when coupled with his forceful personality, led his subordinates to see him as infallible. As Captain Book, commander of Victoria, put it it's at the court-martial that followed disaster, Sir George Tyrion had a mastermind. He loved argument, was a strict disciplinarian. He always used to say that he hated people who agreed with him, but that was different from arguing against the direct order. The mastermind ended up leaving himself and hundreds of men to his death. Testimonies survivors of all ranks featured at subsequent court-martial, and some appeared in the press. However, one of the truly unusual features of the loss of Victoria and its aftermath is that a very lowly crew member, stoker James Curran, got to appear on the public stage and give his side of the story. Details of James Curran's life are far less well documented than those of Tyrion. Curran was born in Dundee in 1873, though unfortunately he is difficult to track in the census. He briefly served in the army and then deserted, joining the Navy in August 1892 for a 12-year stint. He came aboard the Victoria on the 1st of April 1893. According to his enlistment form, the young Scotsman was of average height, just over 5.5 feet, with dark brown hair, grey eyes, and a sallow complexion. Like many other sailors, he had a tattoo. In his case, the figure of a woman drawn on his upper right arm. He gave his trade as seaman, avoiding all mention of his previous army service. The third character in this account was the battleship HMS Victoria, belonged to a two-ship class with HMS Sans Pareil as its sister. She's helpfully on the back cover. The Victoria was built by Armstrong, Mitchell & Co. at Elswick Yard on the River Tyne and launched in April 1807. Sans Pareil was constructed on the Thames and launched in the following month. They each had a displacement of 10,470 tons, a length of 340 feet, and a beam of 70 feet. The ships were built of steel and were the first in the Royal Navy to be powered by triple expansion engines, of which each had two driving twin propellers. Both were armoured ships, though it was never practical desirable with any armoured vessel to protect every part of the hull, apparently. The ships cost 770,000 tons. As a share of GDP, this would equate apparently to 1.1 billion today for each ship. So roughly the per unit program cost of the Type 45s, not the per ship cost, the per unit cost, the per unit program cost. They had carried 27 guns each, 6 torpedo tubes, but their chief armament comprised a pair of massive turret-mounted guns, each weighing 111 tons and built by the Elswick Ordnance Companies. The gun barrels were 16.25 inches in their bore, so 16.25 inches, so... And... fired projectiles that weighed 818 kilograms. The guns were designed and were reckoned that they would fire just 75 times before they need replacing. Yowza. Anyway. It's a good book. It's a lot of fun. And it's a good story, that one. Or rather, it's good history. £70,000. That's how much they cost. Alright, if you're here instead of your sister's birthday, I don't know what that says about your relationship with your sister or your dedication to us. In the case, it says my sister wanted to watch a movie without having someone interrupting it going, why are they randomly singing? Why? So she sent me off told me to go do some work for a bit, but to not be back later than 9 o'clock. And so that's what I've done. I've only literally I have been here from prepping up from 6 and then doing this from 6:30 till 9 o'clock. So it's 3 hours is enough time for them to watch their movie. and then I'll go back for cutting cake and all the other stuff. And I was doing stuff this morning as well, so, you know. Plus, don't take this the wrong way, Rapid Razorback, but I love my family, but we have been living together on, they've been shielded since March last year and haven't been out of the house since March last year. And I very rarely go out of the house so much. So honestly, time apart during the day is good for all of us. That's good. What's the difference between American beer and a beach? Nothing. They're both close to water. Explain to me the fascination of HMS Hood. I get she was sunk suddenly and spectacularly, but the psychological scars seem to be deeper, rather like World War One, having deeper cultural impacts than World War Two. She was considered so big, so powerful that basically it's Titanic syndrome. So big, it's so wonderful, it can't be sunk, and then it's sunk. This is your weekend for world events interrupting. The Israelis have all but publicly admitted to a cyber attack on Iran's Nance facility. Fun times. Could we give BT a tank? If it's just one tank, he can't get into much trouble. Victorian multimedia show? Well, sort of. As close as it can get to it. Hello, Rowan Cash. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Would I be hoping for too much for the RN to sell Type 45s to the RCN? I doubt the RCN would buy them. Dragon is pretty nice for a red dragon paintings. That's good. There is a less child-friendly version of that joke. Not a fan of musicals? Not a fan of La La Land. Definitely not. And this is the next book, which is The Somerville Papers from Routledge. This is interesting. Okay, these are a set of edited papers. This is not an inclusive. Honestly, this is. How do I put this politely? Selections from the private and official correspondence of Admiral of the Fleet James Somerville. Put together by Michael Simpson, Senior Lecturer in History, University of Wales at Swansea, with the assistance of John Somerville, I think, who is, of course, James's son, I think, from memory. First published in 1996 by the Naval Record Society. This version was published in, hardback version published in 2019 by Routledge, and this is the paperback edition, which has been published this year. So I was quite happy to get this. Now, let's see. So let's go for. Sorry, I'm just picking up his. Yeah. Report of proceedings 28th of June to 4th of July. Starting off with the 3rd of July. Foxhound was dispatched at 0300 to proceed ahead with Captain Holland and close Cape Falcon on 0545. Communication was established at the Port Wall signal station, and at 0558 permission was requested to enter the port. Similar request was passed to the Admiral of the port's signal station 0620, together with the following message to Admiral Gensoul. Le Admirateur Britannique est vu, le Commandant Holland confer avec vous. La Marine Royale espère que les propositions vont vous permettre, la Marine nationale française valiante et glorieuse, de se ranger en nos côtes. En cessas vos bâtiments resteront toujours les vôtres et poissonnés, ne astre besoin d'aucune anxiété dans l'avenir. La flotte britannique est au large de Oran pour vous accueillir. Permission for Foxhound to enter was received at 0742, and 10 minutes later the pilot came aboard bringing instructions for Foxhound to proceed inside Merzer Kabir to berth near Dunkirk. On the excuse that messages might have to be conveyed to the FOC Force H, and as a precaution against being prevented from sailing, the ship was however anchored at 0805 in a position 1.6 miles, 115 degrees from Merzer Kabir outside the net. 5 minutes later, the flag lieutenant arrived alongside in Admiral's barge and informed Captain Holland that the Admiral was unable to see him, but would send his chief of staff. At 0847, Foxhound received a signal requesting her to sail immediately. Captain Holland, accompanied by Lieutenant Commander A.Y. Seaman, late British NLO, stood at Bazaria, at once embarked in Foxhound's motorboat, and Foxhound weighed and with her hands fallen in on deck. 32, a reconnaissance aircraft will be flown off Ark Roll 0630, and at 0835, this aircraft reported French battleships and cruisers appeared to be raising steam. 40 minutes later, a further report was made that the battleships were furling warnings. At 0910, Force H arrived off Oran, and message F plus F2 was signalled from Hood, Valiant, Resolution, Arefuser, and Enterprise by signal projectors trained on the French heavy ships. Paravines had been streamed at 0631 and hands closed up at action stations at 0830, but guns were kept trained fore and aft. The visibility at this time was approximately 6 miles. The upper works of the French heavy ships in Merzer Kabir was clearly visible over the breakwater. Meanwhile, Captain Holland had been met halfway between the inner boom and the breakwater by the Admiral's barge with a flag lieutenant on board. Captain Holland handed the flag lieutenant a copy of the proposals as contained in AM 0103/2. and informed him that he would wait for a reply. The proposals probably reached Admiral Junsum at around 0935. At 0925, Captain Holland informed me that the Admiral was trying to avoid him and proposed sending his chief of staff. At about 1000 hours, the flag lieutenant returned with a written reply confirming the assurances already given. Captain Holland had a long and friendly conversation with the flag lieutenant, at the conclusion of which the latter accepted a written statement which Captain Holland prepared previously, and at 10:50 returned to Dunkirk. As a result of this action, Admiral Gensoul's chief of staff brought out a written reply reiterating the Admiral's previous statements. Captain Holland then returned to Foxhound, arriving on board at about 11:25. During this period, Force H was steaming to and fro across the bay and making occasional legs to seaward. Ark Royal with her destroyer stream was acting independently as necessary for flying off aircraft. Meanwhile, further reports had been received in Hood from the reconnaissance aircraft indicating that destroyers in Merzer Kabir had furled awnings, that Paris was hoisting boats, and that the cruisers and destroyers were preparing for sea. The aircraft was directed to watch the submarines in Iran, but reported there was as yet no sign of activity amongst them. On his return to Foxhound, Captain Holland received a message, which I had transmitted at 10:46, indicating that it was imperative that the French should know that I would not allow them to leave harbour unless the terms were accepted. This message was sent in by Lieutenant Commander Spearman, who handed it to the flag lieutenant at 11:40. At the same time, a message was passed to Admiral Gensoul by light informing him of the action being taken by Admiral Godfrey to demilitarize the French ships at Alexandria. About 1200 hours, Foxhound proceeded outside the outer boom in order to avoid having to run the gauntlet of the shore batteries should hostilities commence, while still remaining within easy touch of visual signalling with Dunkirk. Foxhound's signal, summarizing Admiral Gensoul's reply above and indicating the apparent intention of French ships to put to sea and fight, was received in Hood at 12:27. Orders were then given to mine the entrance to the port, and the Admiralty informed that I was preparing to open fire at 13:30 hours. A signal was also made to Foxhound asking Captain Holland if, in the light of these discussions, he saw any alternative to opening fire with main armament. Captain Holland's reply to the signal, saying that he was waiting in a visual signaling touch in case of acceptance before the expiration of time, left me in sound doubt whether Admiral Junsel had in fact been given a time limit in which to decide. A further signal was therefore made to Foxhound. Does anything you have said prevent me opening fire? At 13:07, mine-laying aircraft were flown off with fighter escort, and 5 mines were laid in the entrance to Mirza Kabir. Shortly afterwards, an aircraft report was received that the boom, which had been opened, was now closed, and that boats had not yet been hoisted. It appeared the French had no immediate intention of proceeding to sea, and in consequence I decided to give them until 1500 hours to make a decision. I was strengthened the decision by Captain Holland's reply to my last signal, in which he suggested that the use of force might be avoided if Foxhound went into visual signalling touch and asked if there was any further message. At 13:14 hours, Foxhound proceeded towards Mirza Kabir to keep in visual touch with Dunkirk. 5 minutes later, an aircraft report was received that submarines were leaving Oran. Vortigern was therefore ordered to proceed towards the entrance to stop and, if necessary, to sink any submarine attempting to leave. Aircraft were also ordered to attack in similar circumstances. Subsequent aircraft reports indicated the submarines were merely shifting berth inside the harbour, presumably to obtain added protection from the mole. Foxhound was directed to instruct Admiral Junsel to hoist a large square flag at the masthead if he accepted our terms. A further and final message was about to be passed Dunkirk when a signal was received from Admiral Junsel at 1440 hours, stating that he was ready to receive a delegate for honourable discussion. I debated in my mind whether this was merely an excuse to gain time, decided it was quite possible Admiral Junsel had only now realised it was my intention to use force if necessary. Permission was given for Captain Holland to proceed inshore, and at 15:06, accompanied by Lieutenant Commander Davis, he embarked in Foxhound's motorboat at a point north of Mirza Kabir, just clear of the minefield. This involved a passage of 7.5 miles. It was not until 16:15 hours that Captain Holland, after transferring to the Admiral's barge inside the net fences, arrived on board Dunkirk. All ships were in advanced state of readiness for sea, control positions manned, and tugs standing by the stern of each battleship. In the meantime, aircraft had been flown off and 2 mines laid in the entrance to Oran Harbour. Ressler was ordered to relieve Vortigern off Oran Harbour. Captain Holland was received very formally by Admiral Junsel in the Admiral's cabin. The Admiral was extremely indignant at the presentation of an ultimatum and the mining this harbour. After some considerable discussion, Admiral Junsel apparently first began to realise that force might really be used. It was at this stage that he produced a secret and personal copy of the orders received from and signed by Admiral Daran. When producing these orders, Admiral Junsel asked and received Captain Holland's assurance that the content should not be disseminated, since otherwise immediate German or Italian action would occur. Whilst this long discussion was taking place in the Admiral's cabin off Dunkirk, AM 1614-3, containing instructions to settle matters quickly or you will have reinforcements to deal with, was received at 1646 in Hood. A signal was immediately passed visually and by wireless to Admiral Junsel, informing him that if terms were not accepted, fire would be opened at 17:30 hours. Simultaneously, preparative anvil at 17:13 was made to all ships of Force H. The message referred to reached Admiral Junsel at 17:15 hours. Whilst the discussion with Captain Holland was still proceeding, the latter then drafted a brief signal which was shown to the Admiral, stating that the crews were being reduced and the ships would proceed to Martinique or USA if threatened by the enemy. This was received in Hood at 17:29, but as it did not comply with any of the conditions laid down, air striking forces were ordered to fly off and the battleship stood into the coast. Captain Holland finally left Dunkirk at 17:25, and at the same time, action stations were sounded in the French ships. Transfer to Foxhound's motorboat was effective at 17:35, and the boat proceeded to clear of the net defences. Fire was opened at maximum visibility range of 17,500 yards at 17:54 hours, employing GIC concentration with aircraft spotting. The line of fire was from the northwest, so that the fire from the French ships was to some extent blanked by Mirza Kabir fort and risk of damage to civilian life property reduced. Simultaneously, with opening fire, an aircraft report was received. The destroyers in Mirza Kabir were underway inside the boom. At 17:57, 3 minutes after opening fire, a very large explosion occurred inside the harbour, followed immediately by an immense column of smoke several hundred feet high. There should appear to be little doubt that this was caused by the blowing up of a battleship of the Bretagne class. It was in fact Bretagne herself. Followed shortly afterwards by a similar but smaller explosion, which was apparently a destroyer blowing up. By this time, the harbour was clothed in smoke from explosions of fires, rendering direct spotting almost impossible and air spotting most difficult. Enemy shore batteries opened fire about a minute after the first British salvo. These were promptly engaged by a refuser, and the range was too great for Enterprise's older guns. Shortly afterwards, heavy projectiles commenced to fall near the battleships. It's good. It's worth book. It's a good book. All right, it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm not going to miss the cake, so I'm just going to check the questions. Right, sorry. Remember, some of the paper sounds like a great research tool, but not good recursion reading. Depends if you want to know more about the battles, if you want to know the original detail. But it is more probably a research tool than a book. That's good. That's good. The book was so good, Dr. Clark became engrossed in reading and briefly forgot that he was doing a live stream. Maybe. Carmen, what is the next RN ship who will receive a quote-unquote deep refit? Totally not. Basically, look at the Type 23s. They're currently going through it. The Type 45s are also going through quite a deep refit. Canadian and Drac NFL cowardly combust in the corner. This is why I have that book there, because it's quite useful if I just want to sort of even quiet book. Give him a Covenant tank. It had the radiator at the front and had a pipe full of very hot H2O running through it. Oh joy, Melza Kabir. This isn't going to go well. No, it didn't. Oh, look, one of the many reasons I never start smoke. Too cheap, and this is yeah, it is expensive these days. There's honestly Admiral Gilbert Godfrey. I can hear it now. Right. So, thank you everyone for watching tonight. I'm sorry I'm going to go early, but as I said, I've got birthday cake to go and eat from my sister's birthday. Let's see. Ooh. How about this? How about this on discussion? Very frank discussion was probably going to take place. And take care, everyone. So, thank you, Melanie1640, Rapid Razorback, thank you, Dirt Squad, thank you, Bart Foster, thank you, Anna, thank you, Stafford Thompson, thank you, Deidre40, thank you, John Shea, thank you. On-demand injections of morphine. Ouch. Take care, Grosowski, Kadrian, thank you. Carmen. Is that what you do to drag in Bill Trumps? Is that why we don't hear him? No, he's regularly there, and he talks a lot in Bill Trumps. He's good in Bill Trumps. A lot of fun to have. Both a lot of fun. That reminds me, I've got to make sure that this week's Bill Trumps is all loaded up. All hail the mighty Catalina. Thank you. Thank you, Enoch. Thank you, Carl Harmon. Thank you, Crazy Lurker. Take care, Paul Johnson. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you, Nick Waters. Thank you, Jay Illingworth. Thank you, Steph Thompson. Thank you, Budguy8829. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a good evening.